Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a disassembly and maintenance video for you on this little guy right here. This is the Spartan Blades Harsey. This is the smallest size of it. And I'm very curious to take this guy apart. I'm hoping I might be able to improve the action a little bit. It's actually quite smooth, but I feel like, up in the lubrication and such might be able to help a little bit. Before we go any further, let's double check here. It looks like we are pretty much dead on center, which is a beautiful thing. There is a slight bit of lock stick as well. It's not bad particularly, but it looks like they've actually treated that a little bit from the factory already with what looks to maybe be a Sharpie on there. So I might need to do something similar there. And then this is already sort of a little bit out of whack. That ain't on me. Particularly everything else, yeah, let's go on ahead and just kind of jump into it, take this bad boy apart. So looks like the pivot here is something fierce, maybe T15 if I were a betting man. Let's grab a T15 driver. Is this T15? Yes, this is. I'm going to put it in the bougiest screwdriver, well, one of the bougiest screwdrivers ever. Put it in this bad boy here and take this guy out. I'm hoping the pivot is not free spinning. The pivot is free spinning. All right. Did you see how quickly my dream just fell apart there? Let this be a lesson to you, kids. Okay, don't know which side is actually the screw here, but we'll find out here shortly. Looks like this side is. Okay, so then in that case, hopefully things are broken loose. Yeah, fair amount of thread locker in there, but nice burly pivot, so that's good. And a fair amount of lubrication already. All right, so there's that, and then that would probably make this. No, this is just T8 in the back. All right. Let's go ahead and pop this loose. And I'll pop this guy loose. This is a knife I have never had, despite it being, well, arguably, it's one of the classic kind of tactical knife patterns out there in the world. And I say tactical there relatively loosely in the sense that anything can be tactical in the knife industry. Although Spartan Blades is arguably one of the companies that has a little bit more tactical cred than most of them out there, right? At least based on who's working with them and for them. So anyways, this is the first time I've had a Harsey, actually. So looking forward to that. Oh, is this? No. Okay, never mind. That's just a really big pivot. So there you go. It's got big pivot energy. There you go. Okay, we see a pair of phosphor bronze washers. There is a fair amount of lubrication in here, but it is a little bit on the dirty side. So let me go ahead and take that apart. Yes, I'm going to disassemble the dirt. I'm going to break this dirt down into its atomic components. That'll be perfect. Yes, let's do that. Going to go ahead and clean that off is the proper term there. And yeah, that does look like it is a Sharpie mark there. So what I'm going to go on ahead and do is just in the name of, yeah, it looks like they have also covered the lock face here with some kind of a permanent marker. And it looks like right here is where it's making contact. So I will go ahead and I will do that again before I put this back together. Just because I have too much stuff on my desk at the moment. I just finished filming another review. But I'll just go ahead and do that as an ounce of prevention sort of measure. If they're having to do that from the factory, it's probably a problem. This does not have a lock bar insert. It is it is a metal detent ball. So that's a little bit sort of behind the times relative to a lot of your modern knife market these days. Is it a big problem? No, not at all. But at the same time, that's probably why they're seeing lock stick. It's the big point of a lock bar insert is kind of eliminates the temptation of steel to gall against titanium and such. Anyways, go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and... You're going to note that there are two differently sized washers here. The reason for that is quite simple. If you were to put the bigger washer on here, it would interact with the lock bar. And that's not good. So you need to put the smaller one on that side. So that's that. Let's see here. Aside from that, I'll clean off the pivot here real quick. It does feel like it is pretty lubricated, but I just don't know what they used. I'm going to go on ahead, and for this one, I'm going to choose to use some knife pivot lube. I tend to like its viscosity and such a little bit more than nano oil on these kind of washer knives. But we're pretty much ready to put this guy back together. One thing I will note, and that I have noted so far, is that this is a knife on which everything feels very sort of... It feels very raw. What I mean by that is like a lot of these internal edges are sharp, right? It feels like there's a level of chamfering or tumbling or something like that that hasn't been done here. At some level, it makes for a very crisp and high traction feeling, but at another level, it's not something I'm particularly in love with, and that's something we'll probably be seeing in the review. But like all of these little corners here are very, very raw. So, you know, whatever. It is what it is, but it feels a little bit less so. Actually, let me pull out my Sharpie here. And by the way, if you're curious about, well, this Sharpie or any of the tools I'm using on the channel, go ahead and check out nickshabazz.com/tools for a full listing of everything. But I'm just going ahead and I'm applying some Sharpie to both sides of the lockup here. That way, well, hopefully it should reduce that. And I went ahead and I just did it for the whole thing, but... one little detail here that we're going to notice, there is a detent ball ramp, which I do like seeing. That is nice. But anyways, that should just hopefully minimize the lock stick and should mirror the state in which it came from the factory. Gone ahead and I put a little bit of oil over the detent ball and detent ball path, and I'll go ahead and I'll put a little oil inside the blade here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and insert the pivot back through here, which is indeed free spinning. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply a little bit of oil there and also a little bit around the pivot itself. Now what I want to do is take a look at this washer. It looks like it's got more wear on this side, so I'm going to put that side up against the blade. And what we see here is when we drop this in here, this smaller washer does not interact with the lock bar, which is what we want. Put a little bit of lubrication on top of the washer right here. That will distribute itself onto the blade. Then I can go ahead and drop on the blade. Now what I can do is check this washer. Looks like there's more wear on this side, so I'll lubricate this side and put it against the blade. Put that there. Rotate, rotate, rotate. Now I put the scale back on. This is a very simple knife in terms of... Oh, the standoffs aren't shouldered. That's kind of a shame. There's not like a little bit of a collar that goes up into the standoff on the other side. In order to put this guy, get everything snapped back together, I am going to have to reduce, basically pull down the lock bar there. Push it down, that is, so that way it's not, everything's not kind of forced up against the stop pin here. Where is my T15? Put that here. By the way, I'm not dragging it for T15. I love seeing big hardware on things because it just tends to strip a little bit less, right? So I've gone ahead and cleaned off the pivot here. There's some little bit of gunction down at the bottom there. Probably old dried up thread locker. Yeah, just get rid of that. And then I will grab some blue Loctite on a stick here. A nice temporary thread locker. Put that on there. And now I will just start to put this guy back in. My goal here is not to fully crank this down yet. My goal is just to get it to a place where it's kind of in... Because these standoffs aren't shouldered, I need to make sure everything's in alignment in the back before I screw down the front, right? Or else we're going to have weird alignment issues. This guy, these don't appear to have any kind of thread locker on them. But at the same time, they are tooled on both sides, so I should be able to get them loose regardless. So there's that. And let's go on ahead and put in the... put this one in the back here too. That's good. Come on. There we go. Beautiful. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the blade back in, and what we're going to see right now is that the blade is very heavily favoring, well, not very heavily, but the blade is favoring the show side. It makes sense, because the pivot's still loose and the lock bar is pushing it that direction. So now I just need to tighten down the pivot here. And unfortunately, because this is a free spinning pivot, I'm going to need to use a tool on the other side to do that. And so, there we go. Okay, now here's the thing. Right now it's a little bit too far the other direction. So what I'm going to do is loosen it just a little bit and calibrate it so that looks like, yeah, we're right in the middle now. So let's see where that puts us action-wise. That is a little bit smoother. There is absolutely no blade play. There is a little bit of lock stick there. But that could just be because everything's applying itself to the various surfaces. And I've also heard that on these guys, the lock stick does tend to go away. What I am going to do, though, is to loosen this guy up, the pivot, just a little bit here. There we go. And see whether we've still got... That's felt a little bit more free. Oh, but it did introduce a little bit of play. Okay, so actually I was right where I needed to be. And in fact, when I loosened it, it went slightly off-center. So let's put it back. No play. Nice and smooth. Okay, there we go. That was very easy. They're a very, very simple tool in a lot of ways here, which is not a bad thing. That's not a criticism. But there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.